My name is Faith. I'm 35 and a single mom to Jamie, 12, and Lily, 9. After my divorce, we moved in with my parents to save money for our own place. Everything was wonderful. My parents adored their grandchildren, and we created a loving home together. Until my brother announced his wife was pregnant, and suddenly everything changed. The real grandchild was coming, and nothing would ever be the same. Let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button and stick around to see what happened. When my parents crossed a line I never imagined possible. I never thought I'd be starting over at 33, but life doesn't always follow our plans. 2 years ago, my world shattered when I discovered my husband Eric was having an affair with a coworker. The divorce was messy, painful, and left me emotionally and financially drained. As an accountant at a small firm, my salary was decent, but not enough to maintain the lifestyle we had built together, especially with 2 children to support. When my father Harold suggested we move in with them temporarily, it seemed like the perfect solution. My mother Martha immediately started planning room arrangements and special meals for the kids. Both in their mid-60s, they had recently retired, Dad from his position as a high school principal, and Mom from her administrative job at the same school. "It'll be good for us all," Dad had said, his stern face softening as he looked at Jamie and Lily. "We can help with the kids, and you can save for a down payment on a new place." Jamie, my brilliant but shy son, took the news of the move better than I expected. Always the analytical one, he made lists of pros and cons, ultimately deciding that living with grandparents meant more help with his advanced math projects. With his sandy brown hair and thoughtful gray eyes, so much like mine, he processed the world through patterns and numbers. Will Grandpa still have his chess set? Was his main concern. Lily, my creative whirlwind, was thrilled at the prospect. At 9, her world was full of art projects, dance routines, and stories she wrote in colorful notebooks. Her curly auburn hair, a gift from her father, framed a face always ready to break into a smile. Unlike her brother, she embraced change with enthusiasm. "Grandma promised to teach me how to make her famous apple pie," she had exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. The first few weeks were an adjustment. My parents' 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs of Minneapolis had plenty of space, but we all needed to find our rhythm. Dad was set in his ways. Breakfast at 7 a.m. sharp, no television after 9 p.m., and Sunday dinners were non-negotiable family time. Mom was more flexible, but had specific ideas about housekeeping and child-rearing that sometimes clashed with mine. By the second month, we had settled into a comfortable routine. Dad and Jamie spent evenings playing chess in the study, their heads bent in identical poses of concentration. Mom taught Lily her treasured family recipes in the spacious kitchen, flour dusting both their noses as they laughed together. I took on most household chores to compensate for our living arrangement and worked on rebuilding my career. My parents never asked for rent, insisting instead that I put that money into savings. By the 6-month mark, I had accumulated a modest nest egg toward a future home purchase. Things weren't perfect. Living with your parents as an adult never is. But we were making it work. Then came the news that would change everything. My younger brother Thomas had always been the golden child in our family. 3 years my junior, he had followed our father's footsteps into education, but had risen to become a superintendent by age 32. He and his wife Heather lived in Chicago, where she worked as a corporate attorney. They had it all: successful careers, a beautiful home, exotic vacations. Except for one thing: a child. For 5 years, Thomas and Heather had been trying to conceive, undergoing multiple rounds of fertility treatments without success. Each failed attempt took a toll, especially on Heather, and my parents suffered alongside them, desperately wanting another grandchild. The phone call came on a Sunday evening during our family dinner. "Mom, Dad." Thomas's voice crackled through the speakerphone, excitement evident even through the digital connection. "We have news." My mother clutched my father's hand. "Thomas!" "What is it, sweetheart?" "Heather's pregnant. We just got the confirmation. 12 weeks along and everything looks perfect." The eruption of joy in that dining room was unlike anything I had witnessed before. My mother burst into tears, my father's voice cracked as he congratulated them, And even I felt genuine happiness for my brother and sister-in-law after their long struggle. Only my children seemed confused by the extreme reaction. Jamie leaned over and whispered, "Why is Grandma crying so hard? Is something wrong?" Happy tears. I assured him, though something about the intensity of my parents' reaction made me uneasy. It was joy, yes, but something else too. Something I couldn't quite name yet. I should have recognized it then. I should have seen what was coming. But sometimes the most obvious signs are the ones we're least prepared to acknowledge, especially when they come from the people we trust the most. The changes were subtle at first, almost imperceptible shifts that I might have imagined if not for their increasing frequency. It started with the phone calls. Thomas and Heather would call every few days with updates about the pregnancy, ultrasound pictures, nursery plans, name ideas, normal excited parent stuff. What wasn't normal was my parents' reaction. "Look at our grandson," my mother cooed one evening, showing me a blurry ultrasound image on her phone. "Harold, doesn't he already have your nose?" "Definitely a Thompson," my father agreed proudly. "Our first biological grandson." The word hung in the air between us. Biological. As if Jamie and Lily, who were playing in the next room, somehow counted less. "Dad, what does that mean?" I asked carefully. He looked confused. "You know what I mean, Faith. Of course we love Jamie and Lily, but this is different. This is our bloodline continuing." I reminded him that Jamie and Lily were his grandchildren too, but he waved it away. Of course, but you have to admit it's different. This baby carries our actual DNA." The truth was that my ex-husband had been adopted. It had never seemed to matter before. My parents had embraced Eric as a son-in-law and never once suggested that my children were anything less than their real grandchildren. At least, not until now. As Heather's pregnancy progressed, my parents became increasingly preoccupied. My mother started ordering baby furniture, researching the best strollers, and subscribing to parenting magazines, things she had never done when I was pregnant. "Mom, don't you think Thomas and Heather should be making these decisions?" I asked after discovering a high-end crib being delivered to our house. "They're so busy, and this way they'll have everything ready when they visit," she explained. "We're setting up the guest room as a nursery." "Won't that be wonderful?" The guest room was directly across from Jamie's room. It had always been where Thomas and Heather stayed when visiting, but now it was apparently becoming permanent baby space. "I thought they'd be staying in a hotel when they visit with the baby," I said. "They usually only come twice a year." My mother looked at me as if I'd suggested something scandalous. "Hotel, absolutely not. They'll stay here, of course. They'll need help with the baby, and we want to spend as much time as possible with our grandson." "What about when we find our own place?" I asked. "I've been saving up, remember? We might be ready to move out in a few months." Something flashed across my mother's face. Disappointment, annoyance, before she composed herself. "There's no rush, Faith. This arrangement works for everyone. Besides, it makes more sense for you to stay longer. Housing prices are still so high." The conversation left me unsettled. It was true that the real estate market wasn't ideal, but I had always understood our living arrangement was temporary. Now it seemed my parents were making long-term plans that included Thomas, Heather, and their baby, but possibly not me and my children. The following weeks brought more changes. My parents began skipping Jamie's math competitions and Lily's art shows, events they had previously attended without fail. "We need to prepare for the baby," became their standard excuse. My mother cleared out her craft room, which Lily had been using for her art projects. "We need the space for the baby's things," she explained, when Lily asked why her paints had been packed away. When I confronted her, my mother sighed impatiently. "Faith, it's not like she doesn't have her own room for her crafts. She doesn't want to get paint on her bedroom carpet," I explained. "You've always said the craft room was perfect because of the hardwood floors." "Well, priorities change," my mother replied dismissively. My father, once so involved with Jamie's chess progress, began cutting their evening games short. "I need to help your mother," he'd say, or, "I'm reading this book on early childhood development." One evening I found Jamie sitting alone at the chess table, pieces set up but untouched. "Grandpa forgot we were playing tonight," he said quietly. "I'm sure he just got busy," I said, though we both knew that wasn't true. The most revealing moment came during dinner one night when my father made an announcement. Thomas called today. He and Heather will be visiting next month for a long weekend. They want to see the nursery we've prepared. That's nice, I said, trying to be supportive despite my growing unease. We should plan some family activities. Actually, my mother interjected. We thought it might be best if you took Jamie and Lily somewhere that weekend. Thomas and Heather need peace and quiet in their condition. I stared at her. In their condition, Mom Heather is pregnant, not ill. And this is our home, too. It's our house, my father corrected, his tone suddenly cold. And we think it would be best for everyone. Jamie and Lily exchanged glances across the table. I could see the hurt in their eyes, the dawning realization that they were being pushed aside. No, I said firmly. We're family, too. We'll be respectful of Heather's needs, but we're not going to disappear for the weekend. The tension that followed was thick enough to cut. My parents eventually conceded, but the message was clear, priorities had shifted, and my children were no longer at the top of the list. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked a question that broke my heart. Mommy, do Grandma and Grandpa not love us anymore? I held her close, struggling to find the right words. They love you very much, I said, hoping it was still true. They're just excited about the new baby. But why can't they be excited about the baby and still love us the same? She pressed. It was the question I had been asking myself, and I had no good answer. Later, Jamie stopped by my room, his expression serious. Mom, I think we should find our own place, he said with a maturity beyond his years. Grandma and Grandpa want to focus on Uncle Thomas's baby. That's okay. We should just go. I hugged him, amazed by his perception, and saddened that he had to face this reality. We will, I promised. Soon. I just didn't realize how soon would need to be. Tuesday started like any other day. I woke at 6, prepared breakfast for the kids, and got everyone ready for school and work. My parents were unusually quiet at breakfast, exchanging glances I couldn't interpret. I chalked it up to the growing tension in the house and focused on getting through the morning routine. I'll be home by 5, I told Jamie and Lily as I dropped them off at school. They had early dismissal that day, a teacher planning afternoon, and would be home by 1. My parents had agreed to be there when they arrived. Can we order pizza tonight? Lily asked hopefully. We'll see, I smiled, making a mental note to pick up her favorite pepperoni on the way home. The workday was hectic. End-of-quarter reports kept me chained to my desk, and I barely looked at my phone until lunchtime. When I finally checked, I found 7 missed texts from Lily and 3 from Jamie. My heart dropped as I opened the first one. Mom, something weird is happening. Grandpa and Grandma are moving our stuff. The next, they're taking everything from our rooms. Grandma says we're moving downstairs. And then, Mom, please call. Grandpa says the rooms are for the baby now. Jamie's texts were more controlled but equally alarming. You need to come home. They've moved all our things to the basement rooms. Lily is upset. I immediately called home. My father answered, his voice unnaturally calm. Dad, what's going on? The kids say you're moving their things. We're just making some necessary adjustments, he replied. Thomas called this morning. He and Heather want to come stay for a few weeks before the baby arrives. They need proper accommodations. And that requires moving my children to the basement, I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. The basement rooms are perfectly adequate, he said defensively. We've discussed this, Faith. The baby needs the upstairs rooms. They have better light and more space. We never discussed moving Jamie and Lily to the basement, I protested. Those rooms aren't even finished properly. They're storage spaces with beds. We've fixed them up, he insisted. Besides, it's only temporary until you find your own place. You've been saving, haven't you? Maybe this will motivate you to move faster. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own father was essentially evicting his grandchildren from their rooms for the sake of a baby who wasn't even born yet and wouldn't be living there permanently. I'm coming home, I said, my voice shaking. Don't touch anything else until I get there. My boss was understanding when I explained I had a family emergency. Within 15 minutes, I was in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The 20-minute drive gave me time to process my emotions. Shock, betrayal, anger, and try to formulate a plan. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I had made my decision. The scene that greeted me inside the house was worse than I had imagined. Jamie sat stoically on the bottom stair, his face carefully blank in the way it got when he was deeply upset. Lily was curled up beside him, red-eyed and hiccuping from crying. My parents stood in the living room looking simultaneously defiant and embarrassed. "Show me," I said quietly. Jamie led the way to the basement, Lily trailing behind, still sniffling. The basement had always been partially finished, a laundry area, a small TV room, and two small rooms that had served as occasional guest spaces, but were mostly used for storage. These were now my children's bedrooms. The spaces were dismal. Despite my parents' claims of fixing them up, they had done little more than clear out some boxes and add beds. The walls were bare concrete in Jamie's room, and wood paneling from the 1970s in Lily's. The lighting was harsh fluorescent, the floors cold linoleum. Jamie's room had a small window well that let in minimal light, while Lily's had no window at all. Both rooms smelled musty and damp. Lily's art supplies were piled haphazardly in a corner, many items damaged in the move. Jamie's books and chess set had been shoved onto a wobbly metal shelf, his carefully organized collections now in disarray. "Grandpa said we have to stay down here now," Lily explained, fresh tears welling up. "He said our cousin needs the nice rooms because he's more important." "He didn't say that exactly," Jamie corrected, though his eyes told me the message had been clear enough. I hugged them both, promising this would be resolved, then went back upstairs to confront my parents. They were in the kitchen now, my mother busying herself with dinner preparations, as if nothing unusual had happened. "What were you thinking?" I asked, keeping my voice low for the kids' sake. "Those rooms aren't suitable for children." My mother turned a wooden spoon in hand. "They're perfectly fine rooms, Faith. You're overreacting as usual." Overreacting? You've put my children in damp, windowless rooms without even discussing it with me first. "We knew you'd make a fuss," my father said. "It's a practical solution. Our grandson will need the better rooms." "Jamie and Lily are your grandchildren too," I reminded him, my voice rising despite my efforts. "Of course they are," my mother said dismissively. "But this is different. This baby is our actual flesh and blood. Our grandson will be carrying on the Thompson name, continuing our lineage." The blatant favoritism stunned me into momentary silence. "Martha," my father cautioned, perhaps realizing she had gone too far. But my mother wasn't finished. "It's the truth, Harold. We've loved Jamie and Lily like our own, but this baby is different. He's our real grandchild. Those children upstairs are as real as any grandchild could be," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "The fact that they don't share your DNA doesn't make them any less your family." "That's not what I meant," my mother backpedaled. "It's exactly what you meant," I countered. "And for the record, Thomas's baby won't be living here. He'll be visiting occasionally. My children live here now, and you've just shown them exactly how little you value them." "Now wait just a minute," my father interjected. "We've given you and those kids a home when you had nowhere else to go. A little gratitude would be appropriate." "Gratitude?" I echoed in disbelief. "For what? For treating my children like second-class citizens? For moving their belongings without permission while I was at work? For making them feel unwanted in what was supposed to be their home too?" "This is our house," my father reminded me sternly. "And we get to decide how the space is used." "You're right," I agreed, surprising him. "It is your house, and we won't be imposing on your hospitality any longer." I turned and walked away, heading back to the basement where my children waited. They looked up at me expectantly, hoping I had fixed the situation. I smiled at them, a decision crystallizing in my mind. "Pack your bags," I said. "We're leaving." I expected protests from Jamie and Lily when I told them we were leaving immediately. Instead, I saw relief in their eyes. "Where are we going?" Jamie asked, already reaching for his backpack. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "But we're not staying where we're not wanted." Lily wiped away the last of her tears. "Can I bring all my art stuff?" "Everything, I promised. We're not leaving anything behind." As they began gathering their belongings, I slipped upstairs to my room, thankfully untouched in the day's upheaval. My mind raced as I pulled out my suitcase. Where could we go on such short notice? How would I afford a place without depleting the savings I'd worked so hard to build? What would this mean for the kids' school and my commute? I took a deep breath, pushing aside the panic that threatened to overwhelm me. First things first, we needed somewhere to stay tonight. I pulled out my phone and called Lauren, my best friend since college. Lauren answered on the second ring. Faith, what's up? Aren't you supposed to be at work? I need help, I said, my voice cracking slightly. Can the kids and I stay with you for a few days? Of course, she replied immediately. What happened? I gave her the condensed version as I threw clothes into my suitcase. Those bastards, Lauren said when I finished. Bring the kids here right away. Nate's on a business trip, so you can have our guest room and the kids can use his office. It has a pull-out couch. Thank you, I breathed, feeling the first hint of relief. We'll be there soon. With our immediate accommodation settled, I shifted focus to the bigger picture. I needed to find permanent housing quickly, preferably something that wouldn't disrupt the kids' schooling too much. Lauren lived in the same school district, which would help temporarily, but we needed our own place. After packing my essentials, I sat on the edge of the bed and made two critical phone calls. The first was to Melissa, a real estate agent I'd consulted a few months earlier, when I'd started thinking about moving out. I need something immediately, I explained after recounting the situation. A rental, preferably near Plymouth Elementary and Jefferson Middle School. Something I can move into within days, not weeks. That's a tall order, Melissa warned. But I might have something. There's a townhouse in the Jefferson district that just became available. The previous tenants broke their lease, so the owner is eager to find new occupants. It's not fancy, but it's clean and in your price range. Can I see it tomorrow? I asked. Nah, I'll make it happen, she promised. The second call was to my bank. I had been saving for a down payment on a house, but circumstances had changed. Now I needed to redirect those funds for immediate use. First month's rent, security deposit, moving expenses. It hurt to let go of the dream of buying a home so soon, but my children's well-being came first. By the time I returned to the basement, Jamie and Lily had packed what they could in their school backpacks and a few plastic bags. We need boxes for the rest, Jamie said practically. I nodded. Let's go to the store and get some. We'll come back later when… I trailed off, not wanting to say, when your grandparents aren't around. Jamie understood anyway. When it's quieter, he finished. As we prepared to leave, I wrote a brief note to my parents. Staying with Lauren tonight. We'll return for our things tomorrow. No apologies, no explanations, just the facts. We slipped out the side door to avoid another confrontation, but my mother caught us in the driveway. Where are you going? She demanded, looking at our hastily packed bags. We're leaving, I said simply. We'll be back tomorrow to get the rest of our things. Don't be ridiculous, Faith, she scolded. You're overreacting. Come back inside and we'll discuss this rationally. There's nothing to discuss, I replied. You've made your feelings very clear. We've done everything for you, she insisted, her voice rising. Given you a home, helped with the children, supported you through the divorce. And this is how you repay us. I looked at her, this woman who had raised me, who had once been my safe harbor, and felt nothing but sadness. You helped us when we needed it, and I'm grateful for that, I acknowledged. But today you showed me, and more importantly my children, that your love and support are conditional. That's not something I can accept. That's not fair, she protested. Neither is making two children feel unwanted in their own home, I countered. I won't subject Jamie and Lily to that, not for another day. My mother's face hardened. If you leave now, don't expect us to help you again. No more free childcare, no more meals, no financial support. I've never asked for your money, I reminded her. Just your love and respect for my children. Apparently that was too much to expect. I ushered the kids into the car before she could respond. In the rearview mirror, I could see her standing in the driveway, arms crossed, watching us drive away. For a moment, I almost turned back. The pull of family ties, the weight of obligation, the fear of the unknown, all tugging at me. But then I glanced at my children's faces in the mirror, and my resolve strengthened. This was the right decision, perhaps the only decision I could make. That night at Lauren's, after the kids had finally fallen asleep, I sat in her kitchen and let myself cry for the first time. The tears were for the lost sense of security, for the broken family bonds, for the hurt my children had experienced, and for the hard road ahead. Lauren sat with me, refilling my wine glass and offering silent support. "You know what the worst part is," I said eventually. "I never saw it coming. I knew they were excited about Thomas's baby, but I never imagined they would turn on my kids like this." "People surprise you," Lauren said sadly, "not always in good ways. I just keep thinking about what they said, about the baby being their real grandchild, as if DNA is all that matters in a family. That's their loss," Lauren assured me. "Jamie and Lily are amazing kids. If your parents can't see that because of some outdated notion of bloodlines, they're the ones missing out." I nodded, wiping away tears. "I just need to figure out where we go from here." "One step at a time," Lauren advised. "Tomorrow, you look at that townhouse. If it works, great. If not, you stay here until you find something that does. Nate and I have your back." "I don't know how to thank you," I said. "You do the same for me," she replied simply. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." As I lay on Lauren's guest bed that night, listening to my children's steady breathing from the adjoining room, I made a silent promise to them. We would build something better from this heartbreak. A home where they would never doubt their worth or feel second best. A family defined by love, not biology. It wouldn't be easy, but as I drifted toward sleep, I felt more certain than ever that we were heading in the right direction, away from conditional love, and toward something truer and more enduring. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose that cut through the lingering sadness. While the kids got ready for school, I made a detailed plan for the day. View the townhouse, secure a moving truck, return to my parents' house for our remaining belongings, and set up temporary banking arrangements to cover immediate expenses. "Do we have to go back to grandparents' house?" Lily asked over breakfast, pushing her cereal around in the bowl. "Just to get our things," I assured her. "We'll go when they're not home." "I can help pack," Jamie offered. "I don't mind missing school today." I considered his offer. Under normal circumstances, I would have insisted on school attendance, but these were exceptional times. Both children had been traumatized by yesterday's events, and I suspected neither would focus well in class. "Okay," I agreed. "Both of you can come with me today. We'll make it a family project." Lauren, already dressed for her job as a pharmaceutical sales rep, dropped a set of keys on the counter. "Use my car if you need a second vehicle. Nate left me his, and I'm mostly in my company car anyway." "Are you sure?" I asked, touched by her generosity. "Positive. And I made some calls last night. My brother Mark works for a moving company, and they can send a small truck this afternoon if you need it." I hugged her tightly. "I don't know what we'd do without you." "That's what family is for," she said pointedly. "The real kind." At 10 o'clock, we met Melissa at the townhouse. Located in a modest complex just 3 miles from the kids' schools, it was smaller than I'd hoped. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, but clean and well-maintained. The kitchen had been recently updated, and the small backyard was fenced, providing a safe outdoor space. "The owner is offering a 6-month lease with option to renew," Melissa explained as we toured the space. "He understands your situation and is willing to expedite the application process." "It's small," Jamie observed as he inspected what would be his bedroom. "Smaller than our rooms at home," Lily agreed, then corrected herself. "I mean, at Grandma and Grandpa's." "It is small," I acknowledged. "But it's ours. No one can make us leave or move our things without permission." That seemed to satisfy them, and I watched as they began mentally arranging their belongings in the new space. "I can put my art table by this window," Lily decided. "The light is good. And I can set up my bookshelf along this wall," Jamie added. Their resilience brought tears to my eyes. Despite everything, they were moving forward, adapting to our new reality. "We'll take it," I told Melissa. The paperwork took less than an hour. The owner, a kind elderly man named Mr. Gaines, was remarkably accommodating. "My daughter went through a rough divorce a few years back," he explained when I thanked him for expediting the process. "Sometimes people just need a break." With the lease signed and keys in hand, I contacted Lauren's brother about the moving truck. They could deliver it to my parents' house by 2 o'clock, perfect timing since I knew my parents would be at their weekly bridge game until at least 5. Can we get pizza when we're done moving? Lily asked as we drove toward my parents' house. Absolutely, I promised. And ice cream too. My stomach tightened as we pulled into the familiar driveway. The house looked exactly as it had yesterday, yet everything had changed. I half expected to find the locks changed, but my key still worked. Inside the house was quiet and empty. I breathed a sigh of relief. Confrontation avoided at least for now. Let's start with the basement rooms, I suggested. Pack up everything there, then move to my room. The kids nodded and followed me downstairs. We worked efficiently packing their clothes, books, toys, and personal items. Jamie was methodical, carefully wrapping his chess pieces and organizing his books by subject. Lily was less systematic, but equally determined, insisting on personally packing each of her art supplies to ensure nothing else was damaged. By the time the moving truck arrived, we had nearly everything boxed and ready. The 2 young men Lauren's brother had sent were friendly and efficient, carrying furniture and boxes up from the basement and down from my second-floor bedroom without complaint. As we worked, I found myself mentally saying goodbye to the house I had thought would be our safe haven. Despite everything, there had been good moments here. Holiday celebrations, movie nights, the comfort of family support during the darkest days after my divorce. But those memories were now tainted by the knowledge of how conditional that support had truly been. We were nearly finished loading the truck when a car pulled into the driveway. My heart sank as I recognized my father's sedan. Keep working, I told the movers quietly. We're almost done. Jamie and Lily exchanged nervous glances, but continued carrying smaller items to the truck. My parents approached slowly, taking in the scene with evident shock, despite the note I had left. Faith. My father began, his voice stern, but with an undercurrent of uncertainty. What is the meaning of this? I straightened my shoulders. I told you we were leaving, we're just getting our things. This is ridiculous, my mother interjected. You can't possibly have arranged a new place so quickly. Actually, I have, I replied. We're moving into a townhouse today. A townhouse? My mother's voice dripped with skepticism. Where, in what kind of neighborhood? A nice one, I said simply. Near the kids' schools. My father stepped closer. Faith, you're being impulsive. Let's discuss this rationally. There's no need to upend everyone's lives over a simple misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I repeated incredulously. You moved my children to the basement without consulting me, told them they were less important than a baby who doesn't even live here, and made them feel unwanted in their own home. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a deliberate choice you made. We were just trying to prepare for the baby, my mother insisted. Thomas and Heather need proper accommodations when they visit with our grandson. And my children needed to feel secure and valued, I countered. You chose one over the other. Now, I'm making my choice. My father's expression hardened. We've done everything for you since the divorce, given you a place to stay, helped with the children, supported you financially. And I've been grateful, I acknowledged. But that doesn't give you the right to treat my children as less than. Family isn't about keeping score or extracting payment for help given freely. So you're just going to walk away? My mother asked, her voice rising. After everything we've done, I looked at her sadly. I'm doing exactly what you taught me to do, Mom. I'm putting my children first. The words hung between us, a truth neither of my parents seemed prepared to confront. If you leave now, my father warned, don't expect us to bail you out when this falls apart. No more financial support. No more childcare. It was almost exactly what my mother had said yesterday, and my response remained the same. I've never expected your money, Dad. Just your respect and love for my children. I'm sorry that was too much to ask. I turned away, signaling the end of the conversation, and continued helping the movers with the last few boxes. My parents stood watching, seemingly at a loss for how to respond. As we prepared to leave, I handed my house key to my father. Thank you for opening your home to us when we needed it, I said formally. I'm sorry it ended this way. It doesn't have to end at all, my mother said, her voice softer now. You can still change your mind. I shook my head. Some things can't be undone, Mom. The kids heard what you said about them not being your real grandchildren. They felt what you did by moving them to the basement. Those wounds don't just disappear because you suddenly realize there might be consequences to your actions. I guided Jamie and Lily to our car. They were quiet, solemn, avoiding eye contact with their grandparents. Can we at least say goodbye to the children properly? My mother asked, a note of desperation creeping into her voice. I looked to Jamie and Lily. It's up to you, I told them. You can say goodbye if you want to. Jamie hesitated, then shook his head. Not now, he said quietly. Lily, always more emotional, seemed torn. She looked at her grandmother, then at me, then back again. Finally, she offered a small wave. Bye, she said simply. The hurt on my parents' faces was evident, but they had brought this on themselves. Actions have consequences. A lesson they had taught me repeatedly growing up, but seemed to have forgotten themselves. We'll be in touch once we're settled, I said, not wanting to completely sever ties despite everything. The kids need time. We drove away from my childhood home with mixed emotions: relief, sadness, anxiety, but also hope. In the rearview mirror, I could see my parents standing in the driveway, looking lost and somehow smaller than before. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt, wondering if I was making the right decision. Then I remembered my children's faces when they showed me their basement rooms, and my resolve hardened. We were making the right choice, the only choice. That evening, surrounded by boxes in our new, much smaller home, we sat on the floor eating pizza straight from the box. The townhouse was chaotic, furniture haphazardly placed, and most of our belongings still packed, but there was a lightness between us that had been missing for weeks. I think this could be nice, Jamie said, looking around thoughtfully. It's small, but it's ours. And nobody can move our stuff without asking, Lily added, still clearly processing yesterday's events. That's right, I assured them. This is our home now, and we make the rules together. So can I put my art stuff in the living room? Lily asked hopefully. I laughed. Let's figure out designated spaces tomorrow. For now, let's just be grateful we're here together. Later, after the kids were asleep in their makeshift beds, mattresses on the floor since we hadn't had time to set up bed frames, I sat alone in the quiet living room. The magnitude of what we had done, the bridges potentially burned, weighed heavily on me. I had depleted most of our savings taken on a monthly rent payment that would strain my budget and possibly irreparably damage my relationship with my parents. Yet underneath the anxiety, I felt a certainty that we were on the right path. My children deserved a home where they were valued unconditionally, and I was determined to provide that for them, whatever the cost. Our first week in the townhouse passed in a blur of unpacking, organizing, and adjusting to new routines. I took 2 days off work to get us settled, and the kids missed another day of school to help arrange their rooms. By the weekend, most boxes were unpacked, furniture was in place, and the space was beginning to feel like home. Financial reality set in quickly. The security deposit and first month's rent had depleted most of my savings, and the monthly payments would be significantly higher than the nominal amount I had been contributing to my parents' household expenses. I immediately began looking for ways to supplement my income. I'm taking on some bookkeeping clients on weekends, I explained to the kids over breakfast on Saturday morning. Just temporary until we build our savings back up. I can get a paper route, Jamie offered seriously. Kevin at school has one, and he says it only takes an hour each morning. That's very grown up of you, I said, touched by his willingness to help. But you don't need to worry about the money. That's my job. Your job is school and being a kid. Can I sell some of my art? Lily asked. Mrs. Peterson says my paintings are really good. Let's hold an exhibition right here first, I suggested, not wanting to dampen her enthusiasm. Maybe for your birthday next month. The truth was, I was worried. My salary covered our basic needs, but there was little left over for emergencies or extras. The safety net my parents had provided, free childcare help with groceries, the occasional gift for the kids, was gone now. We were truly on our own. I hadn't heard from my parents since the day we moved out. Part of me had expected, or perhaps hoped, that they would call to apologize or at least check on the kids. Their silence was both a relief and a disappointment. Thomas, however, had called 3 times. I had let the calls go to voicemail, not ready to speak with him yet. His messages were concerned, confused. Apparently, our parents had given him a sanitized version of events, claiming I had overreacted to a simple rearrangement of rooms. On Sunday evening, as I was preparing for the work week ahead, my phone rang with Thomas's number again. This time I answered. "Faith, finally," he said, sounding relieved. "What's going on? Mom and Dad said you moved out suddenly over some room situation." I took a deep breath and told him everything. The months of subtle changes in our parents' behavior, the sudden relocation of the kids to the basement, the hurtful comments about real grandchildren. "Jesus," Thomas said when I finished. "I had no idea. They didn't tell me any of this." "I'm not surprised," I said tiredly. "They probably don't even realize how wrong they were." "Where are you staying now? Are you okay?" I explained about the townhouse and our financial situation, carefully keeping any hint of accusation from my voice. This wasn't Thomas's fault after all. "I want to help," he said immediately. "Let me send you some money to help with the deposit or whatever you need." "That's not necessary," I assured him. "We're managing." "I insist," he pressed. "This situation is partly because of us, because of the baby. I feel terrible." "Thomas, this isn't about you or Heather or the baby," I said firmly. "It's about Mom and Dad's choices. You have nothing to feel guilty about." He was quiet for a moment. "Still, I want to help. Heather does too. We never intended for any of this to happen." I softened a bit. "I know that, and we're happy for you both, truly. This baby is a blessing after everything you've been through. Will you at least let me talk to Jamie and Lily? I'd like to explain that none of this was our idea, that we still care about them very much." I agreed, and for the next 20 minutes, Thomas spoke with each of the kids. I couldn't hear his side of the conversation, but their responses were polite, if somewhat reserved. They had always been fond of their uncle, but the recent events had made them wary. After the kids went to bed, Thomas called back. "They sound okay," he said cautiously. "Are they really?" "They're resilient," I replied. "It hurt them deeply, but they're adjusting. Having their own space helps even if it's smaller." "Mom and Dad really screwed up," he said with unexpected bluntness. "I've tried talking to them, but they're defensive. They keep saying they were just trying to make things nice for the baby." "And that's exactly the problem," I pointed out. "They were willing to hurt two children who already live with them for the sake of a baby who will visit occasionally." "I know," he sighed. "Heather is furious about it. She never wanted special treatment or for anyone to be displaced." We talked a while longer, catching up on his life and Heather's pregnancy. Despite everything, it was nice to reconnect with my brother. By the end of the call, I felt some of the tension between us ease. "We'll figure this out," Thomas promised before hanging up. "Somehow, we'll fix this." I appreciated his optimism, but wasn't sure this particular family fracture could be easily mended. The following week established our new normal. I worked my regular hours, plus Saturday mornings, at a local accounting firm that needed extra help with client books. The kids adapted to getting themselves ready for school while I prepared breakfast, and Jamie, showing maturity beyond his years, took responsibility for walking Lily home after school on the days I couldn't pick them up. Lauren and her husband Nate had us over for dinner twice, providing much-needed adult conversation for me and playmates for the kids. Other friends from before my divorce who had drifted away during my time at my parents' began to reappear in our lives. "You seem different," my coworker Diana commented one lunch break. "More, I don't know, present, less stressed somehow." I considered this. It was true that despite the financial pressure and logistical challenges, I did feel lighter. "I think I'm just more in control now," I said, "making my own decisions for better or worse." "It suits you." She smiled. The first real test came when Lily developed a high fever that Thursday night. Normally, I would have called my mother to stay with her while I took Jamie to school. Now I had to call in sick to work rearranging my already packed schedule and losing a day's pay. "I'm sorry you had to miss work because of me," Lily said miserably from her nest of blankets on the couch. "Don't be silly," I told her, stroking her hot forehead. "Taking care of you is the most important job I have." By the weekend, Lily was better, and we celebrated by finally hanging pictures on the walls, making the townhouse truly ours. As I watched my children carefully decide where each family photo should go, I felt a surge of pride in what we were building together, a smaller but stronger family unit. Then came the news that changed everything again. It was Thomas who called, his voice tight with emotion. "Heather had the baby last night," he said. "Emergency C-section, 6 weeks early." My breath caught. Is she okay? Is the baby? "Heather's fine physically, at least," he assured me. "The baby, Max, is in the NICU. He's stable, but—" His voice broke. "Faith, he has Down syndrome." I closed my eyes, absorbing this information. Oh, Thomas, I'm so sorry. That must have been a shock. The doctors suspected it might be a possibility based on some test results, but we decided not to do the amniocentesis. Too risky. He paused. "Mom and Dad are here. They're not handling it well." "What do you mean?" "They're acting strange." Dad barely looked at Max during their visit to the NICU. And Mom kept asking the doctors if they were sure about the diagnosis, if there could be a mistake. It's like they're in denial. I wished I could say I was surprised. "Give them time," I advised, though I had my doubts. "It's a lot to process." "Heather noticed," Thomas continued. "She's upset. She says if they can't accept Max as he is, she doesn't want them around him." "I understand that," I said carefully. "No one wants their child to feel unwanted or less than." The parallel to my own situation wasn't lost on either of us. "Would you come?" Thomas asked suddenly. "To the hospital, I know it's a lot to ask with everything that's happened, but Heather and I could use the support. And I'd like Max to meet his aunt and cousins." I hesitated only briefly. "Of course we'll come. Just tell us when." That Saturday, we drove the 2 hours to Chicago, stopping to buy a soft blue blanket and stuffed elephant for baby Max. The kids were excited about meeting their new cousin, full of questions about babies in general, and Down syndrome in particular, which I answered as honestly and age-appropriately as I could. At the hospital, we found Thomas pacing outside Heather's room. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and stubble on his usually clean-shaven face, but he brightened when he saw us. "Thank you for coming," he said, hugging me tightly. "Of course," I replied. "How's Heather?" "Physically recovering well. Emotionally, it's been hard. The NICU is stressful, and then with Mom and Dad's reaction." He trailed off, glancing at the kids. I nodded, understanding there was more to discuss later. Heather was sitting up in bed when we entered. Always stylish and put together, she now looked vulnerable in her hospital gown, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. But her smile was genuine when she saw us. "Faith, thank you so much for coming," she said, holding out her arms for a hug. "And Jamie and Lily, too. You've gotten so big since I saw you last." The kids shyly presented their gifts, which Heather received with genuine appreciation. "Max is going to love these," she assured them. "Would you like to meet him? The doctors say he might be able to leave the NICU next week, but for now, we have to visit him there." Jamie and Lily nodded eagerly, and Thomas led us to the neonatal intensive care unit. After washing our hands thoroughly and donning gowns, we were allowed inside, where Thomas guided us to a small incubator in the corner. Baby Max was tiny, weighing just over 4 pounds, with tubes and wires connecting him to various monitors. But as we gazed down at him, what struck me most wasn't his medical equipment, or even the distinctive facial features of Down syndrome. It was how perfect he was. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, a shock of dark hair like his mother's, and when he briefly opened his eyes, they were deep blue like Thomas's. "He's beautiful," I said honestly. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. "He is, isn't he? I just wish—" I squeezed his arm, understanding what remained unspoken. He wished his son's entrance to the world had been celebrated without reservation, without the shadow of disappointment that our parents had cast. Lily pressed her face close to the incubator. "Hi, baby Max," she whispered. "I'm your cousin Lily. When you come home, I'll draw pictures for your room." Jamie, more reserved but equally fascinated, asked thoughtful questions about the equipment and Max's care. The nurse on duty patiently explained everything, clearly approving of the children's interest. Later, while the kids stayed with Heather, Thomas took me to the hospital cafeteria for coffee and a private conversation. "Mom and Dad left yesterday," he said without preamble. "They were supposed to stay the week, help us get settled when Max is released, but they made some excuse about Dad not feeling well and took off." I grimaced, but wasn't surprised. "Have you spoken to them since?" "Mom called this morning, said they needed time to come to terms with Max's condition." His voice was bitter, like it's some tragedy to process rather than their grandchild's birth. "I'm sorry, Thomas. I truly am." He ran a hand through his hair. "Heather's parents arrive tomorrow. They're thrilled about Mac's Down syndrome and all. Her dad already bought a custom jersey with Grandpa's MVP on it." "That's how it should be," I said softly. "I keep thinking about what you told me, about what they said regarding your kids not being their real grandchildren. I didn't fully get it then, but I do now. They only want the perfect family image, not the messy, complicated reality." I nodded, letting him work through these painful revelations at his own pace. "I owe you an apology," he continued. "I should have spoken up more when they started treating Jamie and Lily differently. I noticed some things during our video calls, but didn't say anything." "You couldn't have known how far it would go," I assured him. "Besides, it's not your responsibility to manage our parents' behavior." He looked at me with new respect. "When did you get so wise, big sister?" "Around the time I found my backbone," I replied with a small smile. Before we left the hospital, Thomas pulled me aside once more. "I know things are tight for you right now," he said, pressing an envelope into my hand. "Please take this. Consider it a loan if that makes you more comfortable. But I'd rather think of it as an investment in my niece and nephew." I started to protest, but he stopped me. "Faith, you stood up for your kids when our parents wouldn't. Let me stand up for you now." Swallowing my pride, I accepted the envelope, knowing that sometimes love means allowing others to help when you need it. On the drive home, the kids chattered excitedly about baby Max, already planning what they would teach him when he was older. "He's so tiny," Lily marveled, "and his eyes look like Uncle Thomas's." "The nurse said babies with Down syndrome might take longer to learn some things," Jamie said thoughtfully. "But I can help him with math when he's bigger." "And I'll teach him to paint," Lily added. "Everyone can learn art." Their unconditional acceptance of their cousins, so different from their grandparents' response, filled me with pride. Despite everything, they had learned the right lessons about what makes a family. That night, as I tucked them into bed, Lily asked the question I had been dreading. "Are Grandma and Grandpa going to treat baby Max the way they treated us?" I chose my words carefully. "I hope not, sweetheart. Sometimes people need time to understand what really matters." "What really matters," she pressed. "Love," I said simply. "Not what someone looks like or what they can do or whether they share the same DNA. Just love, plain and simple." She seemed satisfied with this answer, but Jamie, ever perceptive, had one more question as I turned off his light. "Mom, are we going to be okay? Just the three of us?" I smiled at him in the dim glow of his nightlight. "We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be extraordinary." And in that moment, I believed it completely. 6 months after our abrupt departure from my parents' home, our little family had found its rhythm. The townhouse, once so unfamiliar, had become a true home. Photos lined the walls, Lily's artwork brightened every room, and Jamie's chess trophies. He had joined the school team and was thriving, proudly displayed on the living room shelf. Financially, things had stabilized. The extra bookkeeping work had become a steady gig and a surprise promotion. At my main job came with a welcome salary increase. We weren't flush with cash, but we were comfortable no longer living paycheck to paycheck. The most significant change, however, was in our family dynamics. Jamie and Lily had blossomed in our new environment. Without the constant undercurrent of conditional acceptance, they were more confident, more joyful. Jamie had made new friends through the chess club, gradually emerging from his shell. Lily had joined an after-school art program, her creativity flourishing under the guidance of a supportive teacher. "Ms. Watson says I have real talent," she announced one evening, proudly showing me a watercolor landscape that indeed showed remarkable skill for a 9-year-old. "She's absolutely right," I agreed, making a mental note to thank this teacher who had so encouraged my daughter. Even more surprising was the new relationship that had developed between us and Thomas's family. Against doctors' predictions, baby Max had thrived after leaving the NICU. Though he would face developmental challenges related to Down syndrome, he was a happy, engaging infant who had completely captivated his parents. Thomas and Heather had visited us twice, and we had made the trip to Chicago 3 times. The cousins had formed a special bond, Jamie and Lily doting on Max with a protective tenderness that brought tears to my eyes. "He grabbed my finger today," Jamie reported solemnly after our last visit. "I think he recognizes me." "Of course he does," Lily declared. "You're his cousin. Family always knows family." The irony of that statement, given our recent history, wasn't lost on me. My relationship with my parents remained strained. After 2 months of silence following our departure, my mother had called her voice stiff with formality. "We thought you might like to know that we're redecorating the guest rooms," she had said, as if this were the most natural conversation opener after everything that had happened. "That's nice," I replied neutrally. "We thought perhaps the children might like to come stay occasionally, for a visit." The implication was clear. They were offering a partial reconciliation, but on their terms with no acknowledgement of the hurt they had caused. "I'll have to think about that," I told her. "The kids are still processing everything that happened." "It's been 2 months, Faith," she said, a note of impatience creeping into her voice. "Surely they don't still hold a grudge. Children are resilient." "Yes, they are," I agreed, remarkably so. "But that doesn't mean they forget being told they're less important than another child or being moved to the basement like unwanted furniture." My mother sighed. "We've apologized for that." "Have you? Because I don't recall hearing any actual apology." The silence that followed was telling. "Well," she finally said, "the invitation stands. Your father and I would like to see the children." "I'll talk to them," I promised, though I knew what their answer would be. As expected, neither Jamie nor Lily was eager to visit their grandparents. They were polite but firm in their refusal and maturity that both impressed and saddened me. Children shouldn't have to protect themselves from the adults who should love them unconditionally. Thomas kept me updated on our parents' relationship with Max, which was as complicated as I had feared. They visited rarely always with advance notice and for brief periods. They sent expensive gifts, but seemed uncomfortable holding Max or engaging with him directly. "It's like they're afraid of him," Thomas confided during one of our regular phone calls. "Or ashamed, maybe. They never ask about his development or health unless it's to question whether some intervention might fix him." "I'm sorry," I said, genuinely pained for my brother and his family. I wish I could say I was surprised. "Heather's parents are the opposite," he continued. "They've practically moved in. Her dad built a special sensory play area in their house for when Max visits, and her mom has joined 3 different Down syndrome support groups." "That's wonderful," I said, happy that Max had grandparents who embraced him fully. "Faith," Thomas hesitated. "I've been thinking, maybe it's better this way. You and the kids being free of mom and dad's conditions. Seeing how they are with Max, I realize now that they would always have found some way to make Jamie and Lily feel less than." It was a painful truth, but one I had come to accept. "Maybe," I acknowledged, "but I still wish things could have been different. For all of us." The conversation with my parents that finally changed everything happened almost by accident. I had taken the kids to a local park on a beautiful spring Saturday, not realizing that my parents often walk there on weekends. We literally bumped into them near the duck pond, all of us too surprised to immediately retreat. "Faith," my father said, recovering first. "What a coincidence." "Hello, Dad." "Mom," I replied instinctively, placing a protective hand on each child's shoulder. My mother's gaze immediately went to Jamie and Lily, who stood quietly beside me. "You've both grown," she observed. "Lily, your hair is longer, and Jamie, you're nearly as tall as your mother now." The kids murmured polite greetings but stayed close to me. "We were just feeding the ducks," I explained unnecessarily, holding up the bag of bread crusts we had brought. "It's such a nice day." "Yes, lovely." My mother agreed, the awkwardness between us almost palpable. My father cleared his throat. Perhaps we could join you for a few minutes. I looked to Jamie and Lily, silently giving them the choice. After a moment's hesitation, Jamie nodded slightly. For a little while, I agreed. We walked to a bench near the pond, the kids taking turns throwing bread to the eager ducks. My parents sat stiffly beside me, clearly unsure how to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. "How is Thomas's boy?" my father finally asked. "Is he developing all right?" "Max is wonderful," I said, emphasizing his name. "He's meeting all his adjusted milestones, and he's the happiest baby I've ever seen. Thomas and Heather are amazing parents." "That's good," my father nodded. "We haven't seen them much. It's a long drive." "It's the same distance it's always been," I pointed out. My mother shifted uncomfortably. "It's harder at our age, and with the babies, special needs, we don't want to be in the way." I bit back my initial response, aware of the children nearby. "Max doesn't need people to stay out of his way, Mom. He needs grandparents who love him exactly as he is." "Of course we love him," she protested. "He's our grandson." "Like Jamie and Lily are your grandchildren," I said pointedly. My father had the grace to look ashamed. "Faith about what happened?" "Yes." He hesitated, clearly struggling with his pride. "We may have overreacted." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. "And I may have done the same," I conceded. "But my first responsibility is to my children and their well-being." "We understand that," my mother said, surprising me. "We've had a lot of time to think since you left, and seeing how Thomas and Heather are with their son despite the challenges ahead." She trailed off, looking at Jamie and Lily with what seemed like genuine regret. "We miss them," my father admitted quietly. "And you." I wasn't ready to forgive completely, but I could see they were trying in their limited way. "Maybe we could meet for lunch sometime," I suggested. "Neutral territory, see how it goes." The relief on their faces was evident. "We'd like that very much," my mother said. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, I sat in our small but cozy living room and reflected on the day's unexpected encounter. My parents' tentative outreach wasn't the full acknowledgement of wrong or the heartfelt apology I might have hoped for, but it was a start. A recognition, however small, that they had made mistakes they now regretted. Whether this would lead to a true reconciliation, I couldn't say. Trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt. But for the sake of my children, and perhaps even for my parents themselves, I was willing to try, cautiously with boundaries firmly in place. The real revelation, however, had come not from my parents, but from within myself. 6 months ago, I had felt broken, betrayed by the very people who should have supported me unconditionally. I had worried constantly about whether I could provide for my children alone, whether they would be scarred by the abrupt separation from their grandparents, whether I was making the right decisions. Now, looking around our modest but happy home, I knew with certainty that we had not just survived but thrived. Jamie and Lily were more confident and secure than ever before. I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed: financial, emotional, parental. And most importantly, we had built a family defined not by obligation or DNA, but by genuine love and respect. The painful episode with my parents had taught me the most valuable lesson of all true family isn't determined by blood or obligation. It's created through love, acceptance, and mutual respect. It's Thomas and Heather embracing their son exactly as he is. It's Lauren and Nate showing up when we needed them most. It's Jamie and Lily welcoming their cousin Max with open hearts, seeing only a baby to love, not a condition to overcome. And perhaps most significantly, it's me finally understanding that I didn't need my parents' approval or support to be the mother my children deserved. I had everything I needed already: courage, love, and the unwavering commitment to put my children's well-being above all else. As I readied myself for bed that night, I paused at the children's rooms, watching them sleep peacefully. They had weathered the storm with remarkable resilience, teaching me as much about courage and adaptability as I had tried to teach them. Whatever happened with my parents going forward, whether we rebuilt some version of our relationship or maintained a respectful distance, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: we would be okay. More than okay. We had found our way to something better, stronger, and more authentic than what we had lost. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most profound healing. Standing up for my children had cost me much in the short term: financial security, familial support, the comfort of the familiar. But what we had gained was beyond measure: dignity, self respect, and the unshakable knowledge that we were worthy of unconditional love. That knowledge was the foundation upon which we would build our future. A future brighter and more secure than I could have imagined 6 months ago, when I stood in my parents' driveway and made the hardest decision of my life. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the courage to leave behind what hurts them, even when the path forward seems uncertain. That day in telling my children to pack your bags, I wasn't just removing them from a painful situation. I was teaching them the most important lesson of all: that they were worthy of respect, dignity, and unconditional love. Always. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right for yourself or your children? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the family we create is stronger than the family we're born into. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you the courage to make the hard choices when they matter most.